They say no two people remember the Clone Wars in the same way. For us in the Corps, the machinations of alien megacorps like the Trade Federation couldn't have been further from our minds. Chandrilla, more than others, was a haven for what some might call the peaceful, and what I would call the blissfully ignorant. We had lived under the yoke of Commonwealth propaganda for so long that most of my kinsmen could no longer identify his neighbor from the insect filth responsible for the blockade above our world. When I volunteered for the newly minted Republic Navy, I did so as one of only a dozen representing my home planet. Of all the core worlds, Chandrilla contributed the least to the war effort. The great families seemed more concerned with the plight of displaced Nemoidians and other Seps than actually defending the Republic, and in 2.5 decades, that hasn't changed. My experience running haulers through Hutt space earned me a fast track through the Academy, and within 6 months of Geonosis, I found myself appointed as second officer on the cruiser Reliant. By today's standards, she was barely one step above the lowliest Corellian ships, but she worked hard and never let us down when it mattered. But memories can be saved for another time. That was a different life. A life before the terrorists. A life before Mon Mothma betrayed every last one of her kin. A life before the destruction of Stardust Station, or the Death Star, as the insurgents would call it. After Mothma revealed her hand and fled Coruscant, it was only natural that the ISB would descend like a wave on Chandrilla. There were some holdouts, but agitators were swept up quickly and sent off-world. Don't know where they ended up, and don't much care either. I was nearly at the point of re-enlisting then, but it was the destruction of Stardust Station that pushed me over the edge. Decades of work undone. A scientific wonder capable of so much. Ice giant mining, large asteroid destabilization, terraforming, stellar manipulation. The terrorists called it the Death Star, but that station could have meant new life for so many worlds. I knew after the Yavin attack that there could be no negotiating with these extremists. When an enemy is committed as the rebels appear, there's only one solution. To fight back, to hunt down, and to annihilate with extreme prejudice. When I showed up at the local garrison, I was expecting a normal meeting with the Commodore to discuss reinstatement. But instead, I was pulled aside into a conference hall deep in the garrison bowels by an ISB supervisor named Vogel. He was a gaunt man, with eyes that looked permanently bloodshot, and an officer's cap that partially obscured a head of freshly trimmed hair. Sitting at the end of the hall was a prim and proper man of about 40, wearing a clean suit with the governor's insignia. He introduced himself as Governor Wiesel, here to take control of the planet after the Emperor's dissolution of the Senate. They presented me with an offer: command of a ship, my choice of crew, and a singular mission: hunt down and capture the great traitor herself, Mon Mothma. I knew why they would ask me. The Aetius family had long been enemies of the Mothmas, and having a Chandrillan capture the greatest traitor in the galaxy would surely go a long way in clearing my homeworld of its suspected ties to the rebellion. Officially, I was to be placed under the command of a local admiral named Ozzel, who would make arrangements for my ship and crew, and under whom I would serve a short time until I'd gotten my sea legs back. Unofficially, however, I was to report directly to ISB Overwatch, a new division of the ISB tasked with making up for the profound failures of their predecessors. I didn't even take a second to think about the offer. I stood with a salute and pledged my life to Empire and Emperor alike. And with that, my service began once more.